Welcome to the Hard Faith podcast. I'm your host, Spencer Fulmar, the founder of Hard Faith. I've been working in the film and television industry for over 16 years. On Hard Faith, we're about asking difficult questions about life and faith in an R-rated world. All righty. David, thank you so much for coming on to the Hard Faith podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm really glad and honored.
David, can you tell us how you and I got connected?
So I applied my film, Cohabitation, to your great festival on the first year. I saw the name and I thought, well, that seems like something I should participate in, considering the context of my short. So, and you wrote me, which is unusual with film festivals, and we had a short exchange in emails and found out that many things we have many things in common that interest us, and I'm very glad that first of all such a person exists, and second of all that you've created this platform for people to find each other, for people who are connected with this sort of vision, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. I still remember seeing your submission for our first ever Hard Faith Film Festival. And when, I've had Hard Faith as a category in other film festivals I've put on. I've never done a dedicated just Hard Faith Film Festival. To be honest, I was a little nervous about what kind of submissions we would get, if we would have enough submissions to fill up the day of the festival. Is the term Hard Faith, does it even, reach a broad audience, or will people understand how to submit or what they are submitting to? And I was so pleased with the volume of submissions and the quality of submissions, and was just amazed. Your submission was one of the earlier submissions we saw at Cohabitation, and was amazed at the quality and the storytelling and the professionalism. I love Cohabitation. I've watched your short film now probably 15 times.
Oh my God.
And, showed it to my wife as soon as I saw it. And I was like, we can have a festival now because look at this short film. There's actually really quality films that are being submitted. And I know, even just seeing it early on at the beginning of submissions, I knew that yours was going to be one of the top place prizes. And it did win the short film submission category, which is the most competitive, by the way.
Well, first of all, thank you, for it's very pleasant to hear things like that. And I of course I was always nervous about how people in church would see that film, because even though I know that many people who seen this just regular people outside of church culture, they connected with it still, because it's parents, or children. It's something that sort of stories that many people have, but when you watch it with people, with believers, it's really the atmosphere in the room is very different. So hearing that, I'm really honored.
Let's start at the beginning. Where are you calling in from, our international?
Sure. It's it's a small Eastern European country located between Romania and Ukraine, called Moldova. I was born here, born and raised. I studied film in St. Petersburg in Russia. I finished my film school in 2022. So when the war began, and when the whole turn of Russian politics became much more totalitarian, I got my diploma and left with it was a hard decision. Whatever is the next step for me from here.
Tell me, how has the war in Russia and Ukraine, how has that affected you in Moldova? I know it affected your film school classmates. How are you navigating this ongoing situation?
Well, it's been 2 years of just constant like once you think that you have some sort of foundation to stand on, just something happens and you up in the air again. It's hard because you lose the foundation on so many levels. Like you don't know, like professionally, what the coordinates are, what you should do. You don't know in the sense of, what should I do now, because everything changed. The picture of the world that many people have just sort of was destroyed several times. This situation trials what we usually call faith, in the term that, well, what will happen next to you?
Mm-hmm.
And you don't know, and you always have near you people who have it much harder than you do. Like, for example, there's many refugees from Ukraine and Moldova. I did a couple of projects, like we took interviews of them, and the stories that you hear and are just, well, you think you're sorry for yourself. Now you hear that, it puts you in a perspective. But again, many of them are not that. But some of them are traumatized, but some are just so full of life. My parents are ministers too, and one of the things that they do, they have a ministry to refugees too. And one of them is into video making and all that. And once he saw the trailer of my film, and so something that I released, he always so enthusiastic about it. And I just can't put in the perspective the fact that he can't leave Ukraine because he's of age, he's male and he can be in the army. And he's talking, and I thinking about his life situation. He's talking about, well, me and my wife, we have this. We're trying to be a YouTube bloggers, and she talks about books, and I'm really trying to figure out how to set the lights, and what do you think about that? And it's never what you expect. You think people would be down, but they are serving people, because this is one of the things that changes, that people in this situation, of course, get much more open to the word of God. And so they're doing that, and even though their life situation is very hard, and you see them, some of them, very full of life, and not afraid of whatever comes next. And
tell me, what was the inspiration behind cohabitation?
Well, you see, many people usually ask me, after screening, oh, is that your story, and so on. And on the very surface level, no. I never had any sort of major falling out with my religious parents or anything. Actually, I always have to start to give them I always have to start by saying, actually, I have great parents. I was even, while I was watching Bergman films, he had always had this, strict religious father figure in every film. And I thought, well, this is what makes a great filmmaker, this strict religious father. Why my father is so always happy and just great guy? I mean, I could have been so much better if I had really strict and angry religious parents. But it was not the case. So the whole process, was very chaotic while I was trying to write it, because it was a very long time for me before I think I was writing it for 9 months. But 8 months out of this period was just me trying to just not being brave enough to kind of sit and write the script where two people were talking mostly in the room. The people that I was with in film school, our group were very plot oriented, and our curator was always all about that. He was we weren't really doing our auteur films and so on. So I was very timid about doing something not filled with plot and action and so on. So the thing was that I didn't particularly plan to make this film, story about a Christian family. I just thought that I have to make a film. I knew that I want to make a family film about relationships inside of a family. I knew that I wanted to be about mother and daughter, and I, had like a sort of image of the ending. Like I knew that well, I don't want to give it away, but I had this shot, the final shot in the apartment of mother, if you can remember it. So I knew that, but I knew nothing about the context, and I knew that in order for this to work, it has to be like a very specific, very realistic piece, and they were all sort of like. I tried them to make them like a realistic film, but they always a little bit, in the movie world, everything was clean, and I knew that this was supposed to be like a little bit rougher, and I understood at a certain moment that I can only make it like the right level of realism if I do it about something that I know. So I thought, okay, if I have to make it this way, it should be like a movie about two people and the religious complications of their relationships, and it actually got and once these two things came together, once I said to myself, okay, this is about Christian family, and I'm not going to try to add some unnecessary plot to it, and it's going to be just two people talking about what went wrong, and when I wrote the whole thing in a month or so, but a long time, I was just going to all sorts of directions, the wrong ones, and I felt like I was going nowhere. It was my last year of film school. I felt like I'm just the biggest loser because all the deadlines went past me, and I had nothing. But the last 6 months there, I sort of decided on these two things about the screenplay. Sat down, and for a month I was writing, and the rest was sort of, well, it wasn't easy, but I think the roughest time of this whole production was the writing, because you have to say to yourself, okay, I am doing this risky thing. People being not happy about their representation, and I knew that when you take someone who the whole community, the whole like Protestant Christians, evangelical Christians, they really mostly absent from films, specifically not in the US, but in Russia and near countries. Absolutely, they just don't exist there. And even in the US, by what I have seen, usually it's very you can see it, like a crazy Pentecostal preacher at the Southern Gothic detective or something,
right?
Or or you can see like a slimy mega church pastor again at some detective story or something, or like a satire. But there's a lack of stories about real people, with faith being one of main things in their lives. And I knew that, and I knew that there's a great possibility to go there, and there's plenty of conflicts, dilemmas that people have and that are unique, specifically to that group of people. And it's one thing to know that, but when you actually have to do that, and you start, you have many stories in your head, but the one you have to start with is so rough, because it deals with what can go wrong with the faith. So I knew that some people will feel like, also, this is what you think, of us, and the answer is no. It's one of the things that can happen. It's not the, what I think about this whole thing. The facts of reality are just facts, and they are. This is the way, like you cannot be an artist and have a goal of presenting the reality that you think is perfect,
Right.
or that you would how you would like things to be.
Okay.
And you sort of have to understand what the process that people have. Well, because when they see and they say, well, this is me, this is close to me, many people have very thin skin, and they start feeling that this is some sort of an attack on them, and so on.
Yeah, I agree. And you were saying that, religious art, I think one of its better qualities is that it can create in the viewer, even in the filmmaker, somewhat of a introspection. The best art, I think, makes us examine our own lives or affects the way that we see ourselves and others.
Yeah.
Like cohabitation, it was so subtle and nuanced. Like you said, some, especially religious films, can be too ideal and they're so on the nose. There's really no space for introspection because they just spoon feed you everything. But I feel like cohabitation was so brilliant because it was so nuanced in that relationship between the mother and the daughter, and the past hurts and the current situation that the daughter was going through, and how the mother wanted to be there and how the daughter was pushing her away, and how they both had a moment, it feels like, through the film, through this short film, they both looked themselves in the mirror and moved past their past hurts. And even though they didn't, the mother said, I'm sorry, how they both moved forward in that relationship and even had reconciliation. And that just that doesn't happen very often. I feel like it's almost like a supernatural, and especially it should be a Christian attribute to move past and to forgive and to have reconciliation, even whenever people are, not seeing themselves clearly or their actions.
Yeah.
Like a mini sermon. But tell me about the importance of religious art. Why make religious art? Why make films that talk about faith, even hard topics? I think Cohabitation did that well, but what is your hope and what's your art theory on religious art?
I don't have a theory. I just have a lot of questions that pop into my head, and because again, it's a situation where you just always lose the foundation, because I think that even though Christianity in general has a very rich history connected with art, like I think that everything connected with Protestantism and every denomination that branched out has a very, well, let's say troublesome relationship with art, because if something started with Puritanism and let's take the images away, let's leave just the music, and the culture that spawned from that are really have to find what is their relationships with art, and from the start. I think I will start maybe from my film, because I don't want to be too abstract about this. I think people haven't seen it, so I guess I'll talk just a little bit about the plot of it. So it's I don't think it's a particular it's a film about religious people. I'm not sure. No, I think it's not a religious film, but it's a film about religious people, and it's a film about a mother and daughter who are dealing with each other at this time of their life when they have to live together for some time, even though the daughter kind of cut her mother off at a certain point in their life. We don't know what happened, why she did that, but we know that there's very strong tension between them, and we know that again mother is Christian. So in her eyes, we know that the childhood of a daughter was just perfect, and everything made sense, and it was so great until it suddenly wasn't. So it's a premise. They have to live together, and this tension, mother wants to resolve this tension. She wants to understand what went wrong and when. And it's a film about that.
Yeah.
So I know that I'm really interested, as I've said before, in stories that are specific to believers, because some pretty unique situations, some of which are very funny, can be, some of which are very serious, but you cannot really imagine them happening in any other community. And I knew that it's a very interesting atmosphere and setting to start thinking about many difficult themes. Now, I really don't know how to make films about God, let's say, because for example, it's a very for example, I really like your talk with Paul Schrader. I think it's a great episode that you had, and I just finished his book recently. Transcendental Style, yeah, and he very seriously, studies people who made their goal, some sort of spiritual transcendence in film, and I don't know if this is what really at this moment interests me, because I think I'm very interested in people who believe in it and the conflicts that come with this, and I don't know how to approach it yet.
You said that cohabitation isn't necessarily, a faith-based or religious film, but it's a film about religious people. And you also talked earlier in our conversation about how there was some concern about how people are depicted, how Christians are depicted, how people of faith, how people who believe in God are depicted. And as Christians, we're often very self-conscious about that. And yet, in most mainstream television and films, especially Protestant preachers are typically the villains. They're villains or they're fools. So how do you, being a person of faith, depict religious people in films, and why do you think that's important?
I think it's a good thing to do that, because I think it's a good thing for people to see themselves on screen. And I'm not talking about like this sort of like representation in the sense of like a cheerleading, I'm talking about seeing someone who is close to who you are in some aspect, and see this character, deal with serious problems that you might experience. It's a good thing because we all have a very idealistic image of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I really like when films or any sort of art works as a wake-up call, as something that says, you haven't thought of that. You haven't seen that coming. You forgot about this part of yourself. I really like that when I watch something and it talks to me on the level of, you're not as good as you thought you are. And I while I was writing this film, it wasn't like a message to somebody else. It was actually something that I was kind of doing to myself. What I mean by that is that many people think that, you had a similar story, you had a conflict with your parents or anything. But actually, while I was writing it, I was mostly seeing like that the character of mother is closer to me, because I had a sort of two things that I kind of were emotional connection there was that there were situations in your life when you think, I did everything right. Why is this relationship or this situation with somebody, how can it be so wrong if I did everything right? And the answer is always painful, because usually you're not looking at the real problem. And the other thing was that I had a roommate in the dorm, and we had some sort of quarrel. And I thought, okay, I'm going to be grown up here, and I will be the first one to say that I'm sorry. And so I was okay. You know what? I'm sorry. I wasn't right. And I thought, he's going to say he's sorry too, but he just looks at me and says, right, and goes back to his own business. I got so angry at this moment. And I sort of stopped myself, and I thought, wait, what, you were saying it because you mean it, or just because, you should perform this sort of ritual, and you say, and he says this, and everything goes as it was before? Because you have to really be able to say you're sorry and let the person react how they want to. So I thought that the mother was sort of this, I'm saying I'm sorry. How about you say that you're sorry? And so these two things, I think, were two like parts of when I caught myself, being not being my best. So, and while I was writing, I knew that I experienced that, and maybe people will catch on that and look at themselves a certain way. Because I really have, this is one of my favorite things when you see some character and you see him doing something really bad, but at the same time something very relatable. I think it's great in a sense that you can reevaluate yourself. Why am I rooting for what is going on? What's wrong with me? And for me, this effect of what is wrong with me is really, I think, one of my favorite things in films. The average, the life of average Christian is so rich, and it's a shame that the portrayals from the outside are, like you said, either a crook or some kind of shady character or like comic relief, and the depictions from inside are just as wrong, but in the other direction. They just idealistic.
How can people see cohabitation? Well, I'd love to promote it on our Hard Faith website and our Vimeo page. I have a Vimeo on demand page that we're building out that will be like a channel that you can download on Apple TV and Roku and stuff like that. A lot of people want to see it. So, the festival was last summer, but I still hear people asking, like, is there any way I can see cohabitation? So,
wow, really?
Yeah. So I would love to find a way to work together to make that available to people.
Well, I'm thrilled. I'd be glad to do that.
I appreciate that. I hope that you can, in addition to making your US-based films, I hope you can someday attend the Hard Faith Film Festival. We're having our second edition of it this summer in July.
That's great.
Yeah, and, more coming in the future. So hopefully one day you can come and attend the festival in person.
Yeah, that would be great. I would love to have, another film as soon as possible, present there. So,
that'd be great. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you so much for your time, Dave. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. That was a great pleasure.
Thanks so much for listening to this edition of the Hard Faith Podcast. Please subscribe and share this podcast. Visit hardfaith.com to learn more.